Okay, so this is a presentation of Chapter 2, slide deck associated with Chapter 2, where we're talking about formats, functions, and formulas. All right, so some of the things we're going to be talking about in this chapter, the things we focus on, the ability to format cells and ranges of cells, worksheets. We're going to introduce a couple new concepts. We're going to introduce the concept of formulas, and we're going to introduce the concept of functions. In addition, we're going to show you something dealing with conditional formatting. So this idea of leveraging functionality to assist in decision making. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about hiding information on the worksheet, and then also some of the things we can do, some of the capabilities Excel gives us to be able to document functions and formulas. So, as a starting point on this, Excel is a business tool that we use to, we do analysis of data, all right, in one fashion. But it's also a communication tool, all right. So, traditionally, modes of communication include oral communication, written communication, tabular data, which is what Excel is really, what it's designed around. Its kind of core functionality is being able to work with tabular rows and columns of data and be able to allow us to analyze it, do work with it. And then also, what Excel also brings over and above the tabular is the ability to present data in a graphical form. All right, so graphical representation is like using charts and graphs and pictures and things of that nature, which are actually very powerful. It's one thing to look at rows and rows and columns of numbers. It's another thing to see something illustrated in a graphical format. All right, so and these two right here is really where Excel really is the sweet spot for Excel. Working with being able to manage and work with tabular data, and then be able to convert that tabular data into a graphical format. Right. So that's kind of the introduction, kind of our starting point for this conversation. All right, so we talk about formatting. So the key concept you want to keep in your mind when we're looking at Excel is that we have the idea of a cell. The cell will have a value in it. All right, so it could be numbers, it could be text. All right, so it has a value. So if I put 1, 2, 3 in a cell, the value is 1, 2, 3. All right, but then I can also have the ability, after I put the 1, 2, 3 in the cell, I can come back in and change the way it's presented. All right, so we have different, we call it number formats. So we have an accounting format, comma, separated text, currency, general, number, percentage, and then also date time. All right, so let's take a look at Excel. We'll take a quick look at Excel and kind of see what we're talking about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a value in a cell. So I'm going to come to the cell right here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. All right, a little bit bigger. All right, so that is, a numeric value in a cell. It is right justified because it's all numbers. All right. And what I can do, so this is a legitimate number, but what I want to do, actually, let me add another digit to this. So we'll make it 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So what I can do, so this is nice, and a cell, it's got a value in it. But I can do things to this. I can change the way this value is presented. Right? There's a whole range of different ways we can treat this. All right. So I can come in here and I can, for example, I can bold it. I can bold it. I can italicize it. I can underline it. I can increase the font. It's a bold, underlined. I can change the font to say 24. Okay. I can change the font type. So I can change it to say MS Gothic. All right. So I can do all these things to this value. It does not change the value. The value stays 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Even though we change different presentations. And then, in addition, since this is a number, we can come in and apply a set of very specific, number-specific formats. All right, so let's, the way we can get to that, a couple different ways to do it. So the first way I'm going to show you is we're going to do a Control-click, which is in Microsoft, in the Windows world, a right-click. I'm going to come down here, and there's an option on the menu, on a pop-up menu, that says Format Cells. So I'm going to click Format Cells. And Format Cells is going to pop up this menu here. All right, and so for number, I can have a number of different formats I can apply to it. So I can apply a number format. I can take it from being general to a number. If I take it to number, it does a couple things. It adds, and this is actually what it will do, is as I'm going through this, it will give me a view of what the data will look like. So one thing it does is it adds decimal places. So I can, if I'm inclined, I can make this thing roll all the way out, that many places, or as many as I need. I can also come in, I can also change the format. I can use a comma as a dollar as a separator for it. So when I get separation for thousands. Right. And then what will happen is if I'm dealing with a negative number, I have the option of choosing how I want that negative number represented. So I can either represent it with a minus sign in the front. I can represent it as a red. I can represent it, within parentheses, or finally, I can represent it as, a red in parentheses. So we have all these different options. Now, if I go to currency, if I want to make it look like currency, this has a different look too. All right. So it has decimal places. It has a symbol. And we can have all sorts of different currency symbols. So Javanese, Malay, Portuguese, any number, okay, of these. We're just going to keep it regular old dollars. All right, but we can do decimal places on this one. I can change the symbol, and the way it will display it is a dollar sign, those numbers, and it has a built-in. It has a built-in comma separation. So there's no option for a comma set. So each one of these is going to give us a little bit of a different view. So accounting, scientific notation, percentage. Right? But the thing is, this is still 1, 2. The value is still 1, 2, 3, 4. No matter what I do, bolding it and adding all this formatting on top of it. Bottom line is, it's still 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So this is numeric formatting of numbers, and we can, so we can get it through the right-click menu, Format Cells, or if we look at our ribbon. This section of the ribbon here, this grouping of the ribbon here, does the exact same thing. So if I do this pull down, this is general, number, currency, accounting, time, percentage, fraction, scientific. All So there's other numeric formats if I want to use those as well. So I can do the same thing either from a right click and do format cells, or I can do it directly off of the ribbon. So if we go to the ribbon, it actually saves us clicks. And I can do accounting. So all the formatting capability that is on the format cells is also included on the ribbon in this section right here. All right. So, and we talk about so as we just were saying, this is different formats. So accounting format, negative numbers are enclosed in parentheses, currency symbol is aligned to the left side of the cell, zero values displayed as a long dash, decimal place is aligned. And we can compare that to currency. So currency is, well, a couple things. So we can say a negative number is, we can lead it with a dash, or put it in parens, or make it red, or combinations thereof. So it's a little bit of a different view of that. Once again, the value doesn't change. The appearance of what's presented in the cell changes. And as I was just kind of showing here, this is representation. This is from the format cells, or as we say here, this is the section of the ribbon that has that handles it for us. This is, once again, the format cells dialog box, which I just showed. Cell content alignment by default. Numeric formats will always align to the right. And this also includes date and time. Text formats align to the left. So let me show you what this looks like. If I do 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a number, it will move it over to the right. If I do A, B, C, D, which is text, it will align it to the left. And this is the default behavior. Now we can adjust the default behavior. We can, we have the ability to change the alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger cell here. So I'm actually going to use this cell, right? So we increased the, the font on it to be 24. So what it did is it expanded the size of the cell. So I can be here on this cell, and let me put a number in here. We'll do 5, 6, 7, 8, just to change things up. And if we look, since it's a number, it will align it to the right because it's a number. All right. But if we come up here, we have this kind of a set of controls here on the ribbon. And what this does is this controls the alignment. So we can override the default. So this behavior here is the default alignment. All right. But I can come here and I can do something along the line. So if I do these two right and right, align right and align bottom, it'll put it in the bottom right corner. If I align these two, it'll move it to the upper right corner. All right. And then if I do these two middle ones, it'll put it right in the middle of the cell. All right. So this is a feature we can use to change the formatting, to change how the text is presented within the cell. So obviously, as we're working with different cells, different cell types, and we can do it to an individual cell, or we can do it to the entire column of the cell. So what I did is I formatted the entire column. So anything I enter in here is going to have this same format in the center. So it's how we can override what Excel does for us by default. Now we can do some other stuff in here too, around being able to present a different view of the data. All right, so we can adjust the orientation. So orientation is actually it's in the kind of with the alignment section, but it's this icon right here, this orientation. So let's do something. We'll put some dates out here. 12/1/2001. 12/2/2001. 12/3/2001. So I got three dates out here, and we can use these dates, as a header for a column of data. So here's what the breakdown of things are by date. All right. So and we can present it as this, within cells, or what we can do is if we highlight all three of these cells, I can come in here and I can click this orientation. And if I select this angle counterclockwise, what it will do is it will change the alignment of the data of the text that's in the cell and the presentation of it. So now it shows it will take the text and represent it in a slanted fashion, right? Which it can give you it's something you can draw your eye to a cell if you want to call something out. So you want to see, okay, where things are organized by. I can rotate it up. Right? I can change the orientation, and I have a couple different options on this. If you don't like that, you can do it. You can move it clockwise, or you can make it vertical, or you can rotate it up, or you can rotate it down. But the bottom line is, on this, the value stays the same. 12/01, 12/02, 12/03. There's no impact on the value. It's just how it looks. All right. So we have some other tricks we can use too. We can we can actually use color as a means to break up or organize the representation on our spreadsheet. All right. So the way this works is we can apply fill. Every cell, by default, every cell has a fill of blank or of null. So there's basically it's white. But we have the option of changing that color. All right, we can change the background color of the cell. That's what we mean when we say fill color. Is really the background of the cell. All right. And color can be a very powerful way of organizing. Being able to communicate. Now, you can have too much of a good thing. So the name of the game is you want to use color. You want to use color judiciously, and if you use it judiciously, you can really jazz up your the presentation and the representation of the data. Right. So how do we do this? How do we do this in Excel? Right. So I'm going to select the. Well, actually, let's use our dates. So I'm going to highlight these three dates, select these three dates, and if you take a look on our ribbon up top, we have something called a bucket. It looks like a bucket. And it says fill color. If I click the fill color, actually let me I'll do the menu. I have a whole bunch of colors I can apply there. So if I wanted to make it orange, I click orange. If I wanted to make it blue, now if you hover over each of these, what it will do is it'll tell you what the color is. So this is blue accent 1, lighter 60. Green accent 6, lighter 60%. Each one of these has a little bit of a different shade, different shadings. All right. And I can fill, an individual cell or groups of cells. can all have the fill changed. All right, now one of the things you'll find if you start getting to certain colors, like for example, if I change these cells to be purple, all right, by changing the purple, black on purple does not show well. But you can also change the color of the text to make it white, which will make it stand out more. All right. A lot of blues, a lot of grays. And in addition, if you don't like the colors, at the very bottom we have a color palette, which actually will let you create your own color. Right? If nothing suits your fancy, you have the ability to come in and create your own color and use that as the fill. All right. So that is from kind of a formatting. This is a technique we can use, like in this representation here, the way we separate the groups. One way we can separate the groups is we just take the color out. Just remove the color, take it back to default of white. Okay. So we can do cell fills, and we can create borders and structure that can draw your eye where you want. You can highlight and draw your eye to where you want to see in the worksheet. Okay. So we've been working with formatting. Kind of this idea of formatting. And what we've seen is we can do different formats. We can apply multiple formats to an individual cell or group of cells. All right. One of the pretty slick features that Excel has added over the past couple of years is the ability to take a format. We'll take a cell, take an individual cell, and take whatever that format is. So we'll take the format of this cell right here. So we did a bunch of stuff to it. Right. And I can copy it and I can apply it to other cells. Right. Don't change the value, change the format. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this one because we've done a bunch of stuff to this. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to come up to this paintbrush. Right. So this is the paint bucket. This is the paintbrush. The paintbrush allows us to copy the formatting from one location, apply it to another. So I've got this cell selected, so I'm going to hit this. When I click the brush, well, a couple things happen. So number one, we get this selection, as we call it, the marching ants around what we're going to select. And in addition, what it will do is it will also put, it'll change the cursor so it looks like a paintbrush. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this whole column here. I copied the format of that column or into that column. All right. So what will happen now is if I type numbers in, it will have the exact same format as what we had copied. Right. Now if I come to another cell here and I type, we didn't apply the format there. Or here. Right. So I can identify where I have format, the areas where I have done formatting, and I can select it, copy it, and what it will do is it will only copy the format. So as you saw, it didn't copy any of the values. It just copied the way the values are going to be represented. So this is a very cool tool. I use it in my own work. I use it pretty extensively. It really has a lot of value. All right, so that's the format painter. Now pasting. So there's the concept of cutting and pasting, or copying and pasting. has really been around in spreadsheets for a long time. So it was one of the early features that we saw in a spreadsheet. All right, the ability to move stuff around, be able to take a selection and then copy it or move it to someplace else within that worksheet or another worksheet. The way this works is it actually leverages something called a clipboard. So it's a two-step process. First step is you target what you want to copy. All right, so you create your source, you identify your source. You click the copy or cut, which will then move the content into the clipboard. All right, and then you have the option of pasting. Right. So what's happened is it used to be, when you cut and paste, you would just simply cut and paste the cells. But remember what we said is we have the value and we have the format. All right, so the way this works is we have options when we copy or cut the cells to move them around on a spreadsheet. So let's go to our example here again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this set of cells right here vertically, and I'm going to copy it, right, which is this right here where we have the 2 pages. Above it is cuts, but I'm going to do copy. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to paste it. So I'm going to select where I want to start, and I'm going to just hit this paste button, and boom, it just copies over. All right, so I still have the marching in, so I can do other stuff too. So let me come to this next set of cells. But what I'm going to do this time when I paste it, I'm going to use this pull down. So all of a sudden, I see a whole bunch of different things we can do when we do the pasting. All right, so I can copy, I can take it, I can paste the whole thing. So by default, if I just click paste, it'll copy everything, the values and the formats. Or I can copy the formulas, and we'll talk about formulas in a minute. Or I can paste, the values, or I can paste the value and the format. So let's do let me do a quick example here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the value and number formatting. So I'm going to put it right here in that column. All right. So what that did, it copied the values. All right. But because we said, we only wanted to copy the number formatting, it didn't copy the cell formatting. All right. So this is font. So this is all font up here. This is all stuff here. So we didn't apply other like currency or number or anything like that. So it just brought that over. Okay. Or another thing I can do, and we'll do a quick demonstration here. I'm going to put a quick formula in here. So one of the things, we're going to be talking about this a little bit more in depth in a minute, but what you can do with Excel, the way Excel works is you put a value in a cell. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 in the cell. All right. And if I look at the formula bar at the top, if I go to the cell, if I click the cell, it will put the value of the cell in the formula bar. And it works both ways. So what I can do is if I clear this out, it's wired, the formula bar is wired to whatever the active cell is. All right, so I can actually go in the formula bar and I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've created 1, 2, 3, 4, a value of 1, 2, 3, 4 in the cell. Right? In the cell next to it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put something kind of interesting. So I'm going to say equal 1,000 plus 234. I'm going to click return. All right. I didn't format it to center, so I can make it look the same by going. No, this one. Bump and bump. All right, so these two cells look the same when I look at it. All right, got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of the things I had mentioned earlier, and this is kind of an illustration of it, what you see in a cell might not be exactly what's actually behind it. It could be sourced from any number of things. All right, it could be, as we show here, if I see 1, 2, 3, 4, it could be the value 1, 2, 3, 4 put in here, or it could be the result of a calculation, and this is what we call a formula. So we're going to be using the formula bar quite a bit in the work we do. We use it all the time in Excel. All right. So a formula, so we can put in a cell, we can put values, or we can put a formula. And what the formula will do is really a set of instructions to say, okay, do this calculation and put the result in this cell. All right, so one of the things you always have to be aware of when you're looking at a spreadsheet is, okay, where does that field come from? Because this field here right now, I put a value of 1,000 plus 234. It could be this 1,234 could actually be the sum of this column divided by the sum of this column multiplied times the square root of all the values in this column. All right, it could well be something like that. So that formula, you're not restricted. We'll see more of this as we go into it. You can do all sorts of calculations on the formula bar. All right, so this is a really simple example, and we'll see some other ones. Okay, so this is if we talk the work pasting options. So this is the different paste. If you do a cut paste, or I did it by going up using the ribbon, but you can also get this up as well. And you have the choice of either pasting everything. If you paste, it'll do everything, format and value. We can paste the values. We can paste the formulas. We can paste the link. We can paste the formatting. We can transpose. We've got a whole bunch of things we can do when we're doing the paste. All right, so you actually want to kind of think about that when you're using the cut paste, because we can move a lot more than just simply the contents. The simplest thing is the contents of the cells, but we can be very selective about what we want to bring over. Okay, so spell check, like all of the other products in Microsoft Office, Excel could do spell check. However, spell check in Excel is a little bit different. It doesn't run all the time, so when you type text in, it won't automatically tell you it's incorrect, as opposed to Word or PowerPoint. Those have the spell checking is going on dynamically. All right. Within Excel, you have to run it. You have to kind of select it and run it, and it doesn't have a grammar check. All right, because really, what Excel is designed for, processing of data, creation, calculations, working with data, and then putting a presentation around it. But it's not, you wouldn't want to use it as a word processor. If you're doing a whole bunch of Word, then a whole bunch of text, then maybe you should use Word. All right, but it is there. A couple other things we can put into a spreadsheet, which is not necessarily the same thing as a cell. We can insert pictures. So when we talk about pictures, we're talking about digital pictures. So they can have all sorts of different formats. So like one format is called JPEG. So you'll have a file, JPG is the extension, or GIF. All right, so there's a whole slug of them. They have different characteristics and different attributes. And what we have the ability to do is we can put insert a picture into the spreadsheet. It treats a picture differently than it treats, the cells and the data in the cell, the values, stuff in the cell. What it will do is it'll treat it as an object. All right, Excel is smart enough; it knows that a picture is a picture, and it will, it'll insert it into like a space, and then you can adjust. You can adjust the sizings. You have some sizings you can do. You can maneuver it around. All right, and you have some other things you can do around kind of changing the view. You have some things you can fine tune around the presentation of the picture. But it's a real picture, so you could take a picture of you or your dog and put it into your spreadsheet. All right. Some other stuff we can do with it. Actually, there is a built-in, we call it cell style gallery. All right. So what this is Microsoft has gone out and have pre-built a whole series of formats for cells. All right, now where this is at, if we do it off the ribbon, what we will see, we go to the ribbon. So this is our home ribbon. As we come down here, it says cell styles, and if I do this pull down and click that menu, and it has all sorts of things we can just simply copy and apply to a cell. So I can, if I want to put warning text, I formatted that as a warning. I formatted this cell here as a warning text, and red being a warning. Okay, and I can use also, so all it is a means by which we can apply, kind of standardized, pre-built formats and drop it into our spreadsheet. All right, so that's what we call so this is what we call cell styles. In addition to cell styles, we also have something we call themes. So a theme is a collection of font styles, colors, effects, a whole bunch of stuff, all packaged. And what you do is we apply it to a workbook. All right. And so so rather than have to go through and do all of the creation of styles and stuff, we can use a theme. We can apply a theme to the workbook. By default, there is a theme already assigned. It's called the Office theme. All right. We see this in a little bit of a different place. We have to go to the page layout on the ribbon, and the first thing is the themes. So as you can see, we have a whole bunch of these different themes that we can apply. So this is the default one, and each one have different characteristics, because and what it'll do is when you apply it to your worksheet, it'll change all of, when you apply it to your workbook, it'll change all of the worksheets to look like, have a consistent structure and layout, which is pretty slick. I mean, there's some so wood types, WISP. Each one of these have a little bit of will do a different look. You can kind of play around with these, and I think Microsoft has got other ones you can download. If you don't like those, there's other ones we can use as well. All right, so that's a theme. So the idea is, purpose of the theme, as we said, consistent, well-designed look throughout a workbook. All right. Example, as we said, on the ribbon, we do the page layout. We select page layout on the ribbon, and themes are, the first item on that. All right. So all the stuff we've been talking about up to here has really been around formatting, kind of changing the view, applying, different formatting. Trying to think of the right word. Formatting styles, to cells. Doesn't change the content, as we said. It simply is how it gets presented. All right. So now we're going to look at something a little bit different. So we looked at this a second ago, but it's around formulas. So formulas are, kind of the secret. It's a secret sauce to Excel. So this is a big, this is a big item to be able to do stuff in in an Excel worksheet, right? Because what we've done now, you can put data in and you can cut it and you can paste it. But now with formulas, once we start introducing the concept of formulas, we can do mathematical calculations. Right? And a formula can consist of, can contain cell references. It can use constants. It can do functions. We'll talk about functions in a little bit, and then also mathematical operators. All right. So what we mean by that is when we create a formula, I use our mathematical operations, and they are plus, minus, addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Right, those are kind of the big four. This is what you use to build a formula. All right, so let's go and build a formula. All right, actually, we have done this already. If we look at some of the cells we've worked with, like the cell right here, is a formula, which is we took 1,000 and added 234 to it. All right. So let's do something kind of along this. Let's kind of keep going. What I'm going to do is in this next cell, what I'm going to do is I want to add these two cells together and put the result in this cell. All right. So I've highlighted that cell. That's the active cell. So it's I10 is the active cell. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here on the formula line, and I'm going to start with an equal sign. All right. All formulas start with an equal sign. It's how Excel understands that what you're entering in the formula on the formula bar should be treated as a formula. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, I'm going to click the 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you'll see, what it did is it actually put the cell address. So this is G10. It put the cell address there. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to do a plus sign, and I'm going to click the next cell, so G10 and H10. Press return, and what we've got is in this cell here, we have the result of that addition. I added 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and got 2, 4, 6, 8. I put that here, and if I click the cell. If I click the cell, you have to be you have to be careful sometimes, because actually, if you're in the cell, it'll assume you're going to continue. If you're clicking additional cells, it'll assume you're adding values to it. All right. So this is, and this is, a fairly simple form. So we can put numbers in. So in this case, I can add two numbers, 1,000 plus 234, we'll put the result here. But I can also, in the formula, define the cell address. All right. So the way you would read this, as you're looking at it, I would read this as, take the contents of cell G10, add it to the contents of cell H10, and put the results and put it into the cell, because this is where the formula's at. All right. Once again, as we look at this, at first glance, you don't really know if this is a formula or a value, or a formula with constants, or a formula with cell references. It all looks the same. The formula bar, you click the cell, you look at the formula bar, and this will tell you what where that value came from. Right? So we're going to talk about, there's some stuff around that we're going to take a look at in a minute, but we'll hold off. We'll hold off on that for now. We'll kind of get to that as we go. All right, so this is a formula. So this is kind of our concept of a formula. So it's fairly simple. It's math. Now I can do something like this. I could say G10 plus H10, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this times 2. All right. Now it gave me an answer, 3702. All right. So what did it do? So if we look at this, I have, you know, I have 2 operations. Right. So what did it use to build the operation? What did it use? All right. Did it multiply? Did it add G10, H10 and multiply it times 2? Because if you just looked at this, you'd say, okay, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll add G10 and H10 and then I'll multiply it times 2. All right. But that's not how the computer works. All right. So there is, within computing, something within computer science, there's what we call the order of operations, or sometimes it will be referred to as the order of precedence. And what that tells you is the, you know, the way the calculation should be processed. All right. So there's what we call the mnemonic Pemdas, which is the way a calculation, if you have a calculation, how all the individual calculations should be handled. All right. By default, all right, if I have a multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, it will do the multiplication and the division before it does the addition, subtraction. So in our case here, what this represents, the way this worked is, it did a G10 times 2, and then added G10 to it. So as you can see, I put a parentheses around it, and it's the same calculation. Now if I change this, if I say I'm going to do the G10 plus H10, so I'm going to say, so what I'm saying here, when I put parens around it, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to do G10 plus H10 and then multiply that by 2. Well, you see I have a different number. So the precedence of the operation is something you always have to be aware of. All right. So when you create your formulas, what you're going to want to do is use parentheses. All right. So if you want to structure, you know, a series of arithmetic operations within a formula, what you want to do is you want to use parentheses, as I just did here, to say what's going to get done first, what's going to get done second, what's going to get done third, rather than waiting for the default. Right? You don't want to leverage the default. What you want to do is you want to be overt. So, you know, if I want to say I want to add these 2 together and multiply times 2, what I'll do is I'll put a parens around it, which will mean it'll do it first and multiply times 2. All right. So this, as I said, this is a concept just within computer science itself. So Excel is extended, that concept is extended into the Excel world as well. So your best practice is, when you have a formula, is you need to define, you know, or a formula with multiple operations in it. You want to use parentheses to identify what should be done first, what should be done second, what should be done third. Because otherwise, the numbers you get will not be right. Okay. There's another feature. So formulas are one concept we just introduced, and then the other one, which is also, is it more important than formulas? I don't know. They each have their case where they could or should be used. All right. So functions. What a function is a built-in program that performs operations on data. All right. Here's an example for you. you're doing a calculation, you're in the middle of creating it, you're doing some analysis, and what you want to do is you need to calculate the square root of a number. All right. Now, you can create a formula that does that calculation. So, whatever the steps are, it escapes me right now. But if you need to do a square root, there's a way we can do it mathematically. All right. And you can create a formula that does it. Or you could use a square root function, which is already pre-built and is available to you in Excel. All right, so a function is a pre-built program, a built-in program, performs operations on data. It has there are over 400 built-in functions for Excel, some of which are financial, statistical, mathematical, date, time, text. There's a whole bunch of different things that over the years have been developed. And they're very useful and they're very valuable, and leveraging them is also considered a best practice. All right. So the syntax of a function is the function name followed by a pair of parens, and within those parens we put what we call the parameters. All right. And every function will have potentially a different set or different structure for its parameters, or multiple formats for its parameters. All right. But usually what you'll always find, you'll have a function, and the way we put it, so it's embedded within a formula. So if I want to do a sum of a column of numbers, so A1 to A32, I do an equal sum, and then in parens I have A1 colon A32. And what that does is, what that tells me is, okay, go, whatever cell this is in, I'm at, go to A1 and A32, add all the numbers up and put the value in. All right, so as you say, the function name is the name of the function, which is defined by Microsoft in Excel. And then the arguments are the variables of the values that we feed it. So we feed it these two cell addresses, and it knows from there to go out and do all this stuff for us. So a couple of variations on this. So for numbers, I can simplest thing I can do is I can say sum. We'll use sum as the example. I can say sum and just give it a bunch of numbers. And what it'll do is it'll add those numbers together and give me the result. And it'll put the result into that cell. I can do a sum range or a cell range. So what I can do is I can say, here's my starting point, here's my ending point, everything in between, add go through all of them and add everything up. And the result, put it into the cell, the target cell. I can also go through and I can just kind of pick individual cells. It doesn't have to be a range of cells. I can go through and click individual cells and put those addresses in here. And they'll add those together too. We can work with columns. So if we look at our Excel spreadsheet, so a couple things, let's kind of play around with it just a little bit here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use sum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a column of numbers. Right, so I'm going to create one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my little button here, which I can do and generate a list of a range of numbers, and come down here and change these numbers and make it a series of numbers. Auto create a series of numbers. All right. So what I want to do is, okay, now that I've done that, I want to add all these numbers together and put the result in this cell. So in this cell, what I will do is I'll do an equal sum. And what Excel will do is, it also requires you enter it correctly. it'll help you along. So as you start entering the function, it will also give you a picture of what, the format of what the thing needs. All right, so this needs a number, at least one number, and a number could be a number. It could also be a cell address. All right. So in my case, what I'm going to do, and I don't want to enter anything. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to the cell. I'm going to click a cell, and it's going to automatically put that cell address into the formula. And then I can I can just drag all the way down to the 12th, which is on A13. Close the paren, and boom, it gave me my sum. So it's that simple. All right. You can also, for example, some examples of some of the other ones we showed there. Like, for example, if I wanted to get the minimum value that's in this list of numbers, what I can do is, instead of saying sum, I'll just simply say min. And what it'll do is it'll go through that list of numbers and it'll identify what's the value, the lowest value in this one. Obviously, it's 1. And conversely, I can come here, I can make this a max. And it'll search through and give us the largest number. All right. So a whole bunch of stuff we can do. This is fairly simple working with calculations. But as we're going into the different types of calculations, we're going to be using functions because they're very useful. All right. And it speeds things up and it improves our accuracy. Unless you really want to go back and write all the code that you would need to be able to do some of this stuff. Okay. So I've got that. So let's take a look where we're at now. So this is just kind of a presentation of what the sum, of what we just did with the sum function. Now, one additional thing I want to show you. So what I did was I went to this column of numbers, and I came down here and I entered that formula in here. So this is a max now, but it was a sum. What I'm going to do is let's do something a little different. So let's come here. I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to highlight these cells. I'm going to copy them. This is the double page there. Come over here and I'm going to paste them. And I'm just going to paste the whole value. So I'm just going to do paste. I'll say paste the whole thing. Boom. All right. And I got my cell down here. Now I want to sum. So what I did was I came and manually entered the sum. But there's a feature on the ribbon up here at the top. It's at the end. You see a sigma. And if I hover over it, it says sum. And if I click this, what it will do is it will automatically create the formula with the sum function built into it. And in addition, it will also figure making a guess and say, okay, what I will do is given what the current data is structured, you're going to want to do the columns. You want to do a sum of all of these, everything that's in this column. And if I click return, it's my 78. All right. And you can do the same thing. So what happens is that's a sum, average, count numbers, min, max, some of the stuff we had done. You don't actually have to enter the formula, because these are the most common ones. What you can do is go through and highlight it, select a bunch of data. All right. And click the sum. And it'll put it in there. So if I look at that, the formula is here. So there's a lot of shortcuts, a lot of ways, by using stuff that's in the ribbon, the functions that are out here, we can do a lot of stuff without using a lot of keystrokes. Okay, so let's look at, so as our sum function. We also talked about count and average, so I can take a range of numbers and I can count how many numbers are there, how many cells have a number in them. I can do an average of those numbers. And as we saw, I can select the minimum and the maximum number that's in a particular range. All right. So let's take a look at some other interesting things that are built into Excel. There's an idea of what we call conditional formatting. So conditional formatting, this is relatively new as well. What it allows us to do is format cells in such a way so that I can create a rule for those cells that if something happens, if a certain situation occurs, or a certain value goes into those fields, it will change the format of the cell. It'll highlight or change the color or do something to draw attention to it. All right. So let's take a quick look at our spreadsheet again. And what I want to do is I'll use a section here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use conditional formatting. All right. So I'm going to highlight a bunch of cells. All right. Those, what's that, five cells. And I come up here. So you find conditional formatting on the ribbon. If you do the pull down on it, you'll see a whole bunch of things. I'll say highlight cell rules, and then I have in top and bottom rules. So we'll do the highlight cell rules first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick something that says greater than. All right, and what will happen is it'll give us a pop-up menu, and what it'll say, format only cells that contain a cell value. We'll say greater than, and we'll say 100. And then if it's greater than 100, we can format with a light red fill and dark red text. And that's what it'll look like. All right, so I'm going to do an OK. All right, so I'm going to come back here and let me enter some numbers here. So I'll put a 5 in the first cell. Okay, that looks fine. I'll put a 4 in the second cell. Okay. I'll put 115 in the third cell. Boom. What you see is every value that went into these cells, Excel would look and evaluate it against the rule. So if I put a number in here that's matches that rule, it will change the format. So 200. Okay, so what we've got is a range of, we can come in here, evaluate all of, and we can do that to a range of cells. I can do it to an entire column, everything, all million rows that are in column K. I can put that value in there, so if anything that matches that rule shows up, it will change the format, which is really slick. So what you can do is you can pre-format your spreadsheet in such a fashion so that if certain conditions are identified in the data, it will bring it to your attention. It will highlight it, bring it to your attention. Like another example. So one of the things that happens with spreadsheets, or with analysis, like when we're working in business, a lot of times we're not as much interested in the average stuff as opposed to the stuff that's in the tails. So the top items or the bottom items, right? So if you have your best-selling products, you want to know what your best-selling products are and try to figure out why they're the best-selling products. You also want to know what your worst-selling products are and see what you can do about that. So what you see is so we have this top and bottom rules, which says, okay, I can create a rule that says highlight the top 10 items, or all the items that would fall within the top 10%, or the bottom 10 items, or the bottom 10%, or things that are above average or below average. All right. And what it will do is it will format, it will take that column, whatever we put in there, and it would calculate everything that would fall into that range, whatever range you would identify, and it will dynamically figure out what the top 10 items were and highlight them, or the top 10% items, or the bottom. Okay. So there's some very powerful stuff in this conditional format, and it just comes. It used to be you could do stuff like this in a spreadsheet, but you had to be really good at writing programming. All right. So what we're seeing with this is actually what Microsoft has done with Excel is actually brought in a almost a programming type of capability, built into it that you can leverage. All right. So that's conditional formatting. So a couple of examples. We did the one, conditional formatting. We said, okay, if something is greater than something, highlight it. This is an example of the top 10 items, setting a rule to identify the top 10 items in a list. I can, in addition to formatting cells, I can create an icon which will, and set a rule that says, okay, if a certain condition is met, to format, use a formula, evaluate the results, and then based upon that result, put an icon into the spreadsheet. So, if things are going up based upon certain criteria, the arrow shows up, and then if something's going down, based upon the calculations, we can have the arrow so it points down. So we can apply this to a spreadsheet, put data in it, and then have it, so we can start doing analytical work using pretty simple techniques, simple, powerful techniques. All right. And then, some additional, we can create formulas, conditional formula, a formula selection, use a formula to determine what cells to format, and say format the values when this formula is true. And if that's the case, it will, this is what it will display. So this is some pretty slick stuff. All right. So in addition to that, we have some additional functionality I want to show real quick. We can actually hide information in a worksheet. Now, why would we want to do something like that? Why would we want to hide the data in a worksheet? Well, what can happen is you could have a situation where you have all these rules, okay, this is a trigger point. You want something greater than this or less than this. Now, one way to do it, as you create the formula, you can hardwire the data into the formula. All right, so I can say, I can put numbers into the actual formula. Or what I can do is I can create a set of cells, put values into those cells, and then in the formula, I can put the cell reference. All right. But if you have something like that, one of the things that's really important is you don't want to have people messing with it. So if I have something that's going to trigger, if I have a cell, the value of of the contents of a cell will trigger certain activities, and the expectation is that number will stay constant. If somebody comes in and does something, deletes it, basically it can blow up the worksheet. All right. So what you can do is when you have situations like that, you can do stuff like you can hide the selection, you can hide the data that's on the worksheet. All right. And then the other thing you can do, you can also protect it. So you can actually put a protection on it so nobody can touch it. It's there. It's all it's in the worksheet, but it's something that they can't see. But the administrator or somebody with access can see. Right? So just because it's hidden, it's still out there. and it can be adjusted. Right. So I got one last thing I want to show here, one last little feature of Excel, and it's called display formulas. So you remember we were talking just a couple minutes ago about formulas and cells. So the idea is, okay, the way I can tell what's in a cell is I can click it, and if I look at the formula bar, it will tell me what's in that. So in this case, I have a number, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So a lot of these are numbers. And then this is a formula with a sum in it. So as we said, what you see, in the cells is not necessarily, it can be sourced from a number of different things. It could be, either, values that are entered on the formula bar, or, the results of a very complicated calculation. All right. So it's always kind of tough, if you get a spreadsheet and you're trying to figure out, well, what's going on here? Like, where are all the formulas at? And what are they? And what are they doing? All right. So there's a feature that is in Excel. All right. And where you get to this is, it's on the ribbon. It's under the Formula tab on the ribbon. All right. So we'll be looking more at this. So this is we're just doing kind of an early look-see at formulas. But we have a option here. It says show formulas. So if I go to a page, or if I go to a worksheet and I click the show formulas, what it will do is it will basically light up all of the formulas that are present on that worksheet. So this, this first one is, max A, it's max A2, A13. I have a sum. I have, another calculation here, a formula involving addresses. All right, I have another sum here. All right, so it will go through that worksheet, and it will light up at all the formulas. So you can go in and take a look at it and be able to try to, get a better grasp of what is actually going on that worksheet, as opposed to trying to go through and click the fields and click the individual cells and see what the formulas that are in each one. So this is what once again, I think this is relatively new. All right. So that really kind of wraps up what we're talking about in this chapter. All right. So a quick summary, things we talked about. So we talked about, formatting of cells, cell ranges, and worksheets. The idea that you have a value and then you have the format, and they're really two separate things. So the formatting of the value, really just deals with how you change the look, the presentation of it. So we talked about number formatting, alignment, basically what the default alignment is, and then the way you can override it. We talked about colors, how we can use colors and create borders, leveraging colors. And we also talked about styles and themes, the built-in stuff that we can leverage to quickly apply a standard presentation format to a worksheet. We also introduced the concept of Excel formulas. So we have mathematical operations. We also talked the importance of order of operations, that the best practice is the use of parentheses to explicitly call out the order of operations in a formula. So which ones should be done first, second, third. Talked about Excel statistical, some of Excel statistical function. This is not the whole limit. This is just kind of introduction. So sum and count, average, min, max. All right. So so what happens is we do these functions. These functions are executed within a formula. All right. And don't forget, an Excel formula goes onto the formula bar or into the cell. But the first thing you type to designate a formula is an equal sign. Right, so if I put something into a cell and it has an equal sign, it will interpret everything after it as a formula. If you don't put the equal sign, it will just treat it as a bunch of data and present. Okay, and then finally, we looked at some of the features around worksheet enhancements and documentation. So we talked about conditional formatting, hiding unnecessary information, protecting it, and then also the options to be able to let us look at a worksheet and document, be able to identify functions and all the functions and formulas that are embedded in the worksheet without having to go through individually and check every cell. All right, so that wraps up everything we need to talk about within Chapter 2.